All right, welcome everyone to Kress's Corner. I think it's number 5. Today, we have Moritz from Lightspeed joining us to talk about the VC world. Again, the whole point of this is to find people that I am interested in and subjects that I'm interested in, and talking it through with people that are experts in those areas. That's kind of what I do for my business. Again, it's hopefully not to be PR fluff. Of course, some of the ones we've done in the past have been a little bit too PR fluff for me. But anyway, my goal is basically to understand how Moritz and Lightspeed fit within the ecosystem and how he's helping the industry and innovating and moving the industry in the right direction. So why am I interested in Mr. Moritz at Lightspeed? Lightstreet or Lightspeed? Am I messing this up? Lightspeed, okay. So I think the VC landscape has changed pretty dramatically over the last 6 months, and it seems challenging at best, I would say. Companies were funded that, in my opinion, make absolutely no sense, and most of them at this point are probably starting to run, not most of them, but a lot of them are probably running out of money and out of funding options, if I were to guess. And my problem here with the industry right now is, like, from a VC perspective, what is actually investable, right? The mobile market seems uninvestable because of Apple's mobile gaming recession continues, and other changes to that privacy will happen. Blockchain is on a respirator right now, and all these issues now coming in terms of regulatory issues are going to be could be even more challenging going forward. VR died once, looks like it's dying again. And the only life support it has from Facebook, and I think Facebook's about ready to pull that plug pretty soon. And then the console PC space is amazing and huge, but it's hit-driven and very expensive and tough to pick winners at the VC level. And that leaves kind of enabling technologies, which I think are interesting, but that's kind of a crapshoot at best, from my understanding. So I guess the broader question I want to know from Mr. Moritz here is, how do you navigate the VC business? So we have Moritz, who is a partner at Lightspeed, to hopefully answer some of my inane and rude questions. He joined Lightspeed after a 3-year stint at Bitcraft, started his career at IBM, I believe, for 7 years, then got a business degree, went to Goldman Sachs, which we won't hold against him because no one likes Goldman Sachs. And then went to Bitcraft, and then for 3 years, and now is at Lightspeed just a few 6 months ago. So tell me a bit about your background holistically, and then we'll go from there, Mr. Moritz.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Eric. Should be a good discussion. You already touched on a lot of sore points in the VC gaming industry, and totally happy to unpack them in detail for our listeners today. In terms of background, I think the most important thing to know is that I've just been a lifelong gamer myself. I love this stuff. I'm in it for the love of the game, no pun intended. 20 years ago, I was playing multiplayer online games as soon as I got hold of the internet. We got connected rather late in that small town in Germany that I was growing up in, but once that happened, there was a welcome escape into, precursor of the metaverse. Might forever be a precursor of the metaverse. But Diablo 2 was my game of choice, and played that probably for 6-7 years, 5 hours a day. Financed my way to undergraduate and graduate education with selling predominantly items back then on eBay.
All right. So my first question for you actually is on this point, because there was no ranking boards on Diablo 2 at the time, right?
There were competitive ladder seasons in the closed BattleNet. So there was a game to get to level 99.
So it was a speed run to get to 99 versus there was no PvP.
I mean, it was more like a 2-month, 3-month speed run, depending on how far we are into the ladder system.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so
and then also once you get to a certain point, like, there's a pretty tight knit community, and I think you can, among those 100 that qualify, figure out who has the upper hand at any point in time.
Got it. But from your background, you basically finished with the equivalent of high school and spent 5 years doing this before you went to college. Is that accurate?
Not quite. So this was during high school. I did, in fact, delay college by a year just to have more time and play video games more. My parents were cool with it at the time. They had actually not graduated high school, both of them. So my bar was finishing high school, which I did, but we never had
your parents like hippies or something? I mean, like, why they
No,
just
just
allowed
like,
you to
you know.
sit there and play games full time before college? I mean, you clearly had aptitude, right? Like, you were a smart dude.
Well,
I didn't care.
I mean, this is a whole conversation for another podcast, maybe. But I mean, first of all, the vocational track, especially at point in time, was much more viable in Germany than it is in the United States. So not having a high school or college degree might nowadays be the end of the world, even in Germany, but certainly was not at the time when they were going through their professional and academic career, or maybe not so academic career. But yeah, I did not actually have anyone in my immediate family who had gone to college. And so I did pretty well in high school. I even got a scholarship, a full ride scholarship for any college, which, you know, college in Germany isn't particularly expensive, but a full ride scholarship still helps. My parents and I actually rejected that scholarship because we thought we can't afford a scholarship. We thought it's something you have to pay money for. We didn't even understand it's something that pays for school. So anyway, I mean, there was a different time, but yeah, I also, not only did I delay for a year, I actually also didn't end up going to a proper college. I did a mix of a vocational training and a, you know, community college-ish education that was basically a bachelor's degree with an asterisk in partnership with IBM. And only later, when I applied to Stanford for business school, I realized that the U.S. higher education system did not fully recognize what I thought was a bachelor's degree. So I did my graduate degree in the U.S. without having a college degree, if you want so.
All right. The first chink in the armor, I suppose. Okay, so you ended up going to IBM where you're doing strategy work for a while. And then you got your business degree, and then you went to Goldman where you did the gaming practice. Like, what deals were you doing at Goldman?
Yeah, so my big deals at Goldman were actually for what I was brought in and hired for, which wasn't gaming, but enterprise IT. So the big ones that I advised on were Dell's acquisition of EMC, which I still think stands as the largest tech deal ever at $67 billion. And then IBM's acquisition of Red Hat was, I think, a $34 billion deal, which was special to me, just given my own tenure at IBM. And then we basically were ramping up the gaming practice. I think transactions during my time, we sold ZeniMax to Microsoft. The Roblox and Unity IPO happened in around, I think, 2020. This was just when I left Goldman for Bitkraft. But yeah, I mean, transactions really picked up, I think, 2020, 21, 22. And then it's the same practice that then later advised on Microsoft's Activision acquisition, or at least attempt thereof.
Yeah, it looks like that's not going to happen. Every day it seems to be less and less likely. I mean, what's your opinion on that? Do you think? Yeah,
I mean, I don't follow that as much as I used to. Seems like they're going to get the most pushback from the UK regulator. Yeah. But yeah, I don't have a particular opinion beyond what's publicly out there.
Yeah. So anyway, the first douchey question I have is, like, if you were only at Bitkraft for like 3 years, that seems like a short time at a VC firm. Maybe I'm wrong, right? But you establish relationships with these investments, and you build this trust, and you're on boards, and you're doing your thing, right, as a VC. So isn't it kind of pretty traumatic to move from one VC to another, like in the midstream, or is that not true?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a general career advice, you probably only want to join a VC firm when your plan is to stay there forever, or at least for a long time. Also internally, the way carry and investing works, there's certainly an incentive to, as a VC professional, solve for long stints. Even just financially speaking, in addition to obviously relationships forming with portfolio companies, with investors at the fund. And that was certainly my plan. And don't get me wrong. And I think we've also interacted during my time at Bitkraft. we were loving what we were doing. It was all started from a place of passion and care about the gaming industry at a time when, gaming VC wasn't really a thing yet. Like Bitcraft was one of the few first specialist gaming VC firms around, like 2019, 2020. There really wasn't much gaming venture capital when all this started, and then scaled this together with the founders to the most active firm in 2020, 21, and 22. So my plan, and my plan was to stay there. I was very happy there. I still in close touch and good relationships with all my former colleagues there. But rather serendipitously, Lightspeed came with an opportunity to build and lead a practice for what is a very established big firm in the global VC landscape, a generalist with now, I think, over $18 billion in capital under management, long history both in enterprise and consumer investing, and frankly, an offer that was a bit too good to pass on, just in terms, and
so
not
basically
financially.
It's all about the Benjamins, right? At the end of the day, like, is it kind of like that? Like, because it's the same opportunity. Well, I don't know. It's all so financially. It's always very hard to compare these things because larger funds are also hard to turn into 10x funds, 50x funds. Right.
You can do that with a fund the size of Bitcraft. It's harder to do with a fund the size of Lightspeed. That's just a reality.
Yeah.
And so I think financially these things are very hard to compare. But I think, the opportunity to effectively build a practice, to build a brand and kind of like put your own spin on this, it was very similar to the work I'd done at Goldman, to now do it again in VC. It was just very compelling setup. And, with regard to your comment on relationships, I mean, my portfolio companies, a lot of our investors too, I'm still in super close touch with. And those are all relationships that don't go away. They might actually become commercial relationships again, because as you know, a lot of these companies seek multiple funding rounds before there is an exit event. And we're hosting events even this week, and then at DICE and GDC, right. And all of these are welcome guests and friends of the family.
In that sense, it's kind of like investment bankers, right, who have all the relationships with the biggest companies or big companies, and so they can move and set up shop somewhere else and maintain those relationships. Like you don't get cut off from that, right? So that helps.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of a different dynamic because a lot of the companies I invested in, I was sitting on the board. That's obviously no longer the case. So these are Bitcraft's board seats. So the advisory role and the involvement is a different one. But also, when I left, I sent a very clear message to all my portfolio companies saying that, if I can be helpful going forward, they should not be shy to reach out. And I think all of them I've been almost in like bi-weekly touch with since I joined Lightspeed.
Bitcraft's cool with that, I guess.
I mean, it's also in their interest, right? Like these are all things that will maximize the success of their portfolio companies too.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense. I guess the biggest challenge I would imagine with Lightspeed is because you're a small fish in a big pond, right? Where gaming is not a vertical that they are focused on. And so versus Bitcraft, which is basically all they do. So there's a chance that they will not give you the resources or the funds in order to do what you need to do. Or do you have a certain allocation of a certain dollar amount that you can use towards gaming?
So all the investments across sectors and geos come out of big early stage and growth stage funds. There are no hard allocations for any sector per se.
Got it.
But if you just look at what they've done historically, Lightspeed's no stranger to gaming. They've made over 30 investments, I think over $300 million of capital deployed. If you just look at the last 2 years, some people actually online have gone through the exercise of looking at the last 2 years and then multiplying that and, assuming a certain follow-on percentage to kind of like back into what is possibly the allocation for gaming. There's plenty of capital, not just in the early stage, but also in the growth and late stages that we can deploy in gaming. And I think, Lightspeed wouldn't be running around with big PR, a soon-to-be launched gaming website, practice, sub-brand, team, etc., if they weren't serious about this.
Got it. All right. So this dovetails nicely into where are the opportunities, right? I mean, do you kind of agree with my assessment of the landscape? I know it's overly cynical, but I it just seems like a scary place to be to invest right now. And I have lots of questions around this, but like, what is kind of the strategy for you guys going forward, right? Given where we are versus the past 2 years from an investment perspective.
So I agree with all your cynicism, and I can also go into kind of like the same buckets of where there's opportunity and where things are a little bit trickier, or where things, from my perspective, have been or seemingly overfunded in the past 2 years. I think where I disagree is it's not a scary place at all. It's the largest consumer category. It's growing nicely. It has strong tailwinds, generational and technological tailwinds that, will bring us probably 10% growth over many years to come. So there's certainly value and an expected increase in value. And I also think that a lot of interesting innovation is coming from smaller players versus inert incumbents. So I think the tricky piece is rather finding those pockets of opportunity, but I don't think there should be any question that there'll be a ton of amazing gaming companies that are born in this 2020 to 2030 vintage.
I guess from a total addressable market perspective, like the TAM calculations, because part of the reason I want to talk to you is like, what is the fundamentals of venture capital investing in general, right? Like this is a broader topic, right? But like when you're looking at the market and you have your pre-revenue, pre-earnings, pre-employees in the early stages, right? It's like you basically, I guess one of the key metrics has to be how big the market is for a particular product, right? Or particular service or whatever, right? What are they going after? I mean, the founders are important. Obviously, that's a huge part of it. But like, what market are they going after, or what market they're creating? And so that's my biggest concern with VC right now is I just don't see where the new markets are for them to compete in, right? So, as I said earlier, VR is dead, mobile is tough, and the AAAs are basically dominated by huge companies that have unlimited budget, basically. So do you see other markets that I'm not thinking about that have opportunities for smaller companies? Or is it just them chipping away at the big guys with innovative, cheap products that can gain market share? Or I don't know. Tell me what you're thinking.
Depends a little bit on the subsegment, but let me take you through how I kind of like segment the landscape and what I'm focused more on and what I'm maybe focused a little bit less on. But also like along, just one commentary on your previous messaging. I think TAM is somewhat overrated. These TAM slides, I don't really particularly care if something's like a $5 billion or $10 billion or $20 billion or $100 billion TAM. It's always more helpful in the early stage to think about things bottom up versus top down and rather look at a pipeline of the first customers paying 10K, 20K a month for whatever it is that you're building and kind of like building up from there. If you're looking at a studio, if you have the right people and the right talent, they will inevitably go after sizable opportunities. And the right talent, from my perspective, is an extremely high bar. So I've, to your comment on PC, console, and mobile, I've personally shied away from mobile investing in the past, almost out of preference. I think now it's a really difficult area to invest, not just because of ATT and all the stuff that's going on the distribution and marketing front. I also think for investors, especially in the early stage, the coupling between talent and commercial success is very loose in mobile compared to PC console. We hope that there is somewhat of a coupling in PC console. That's the other thing that, as I think VCs in gaming, we have to admit, there isn't enough data. There haven't been enough AAA funded, like VC funded game studios of, let's say, 30, 50 people with the same amount, like 30, 50 million in funding to go and release a AAA PC console cross-platform game. Very few, like Second Dinner is one that came to market, and they seem to be doing pretty well. But this industry is too young to have this verdict. And so I think we'll be a lot smarter on whether this all works in about a year or two when another 5, 10, 15 have come to market. But on the game studio side, for me, it's 80% quality of team. And the quality of the team is, the question I ask is effectively, have these team members who are starting out, and I love to do game studios in the seed, we were not shy to lean in early. Frankly, between the seed, the A and the B, oftentimes the only thing that really changes for VCs is the price, which goes up by 2, 3, 4, 5x. But the pre-market,
aren't you way too big to do seed and A? Like
we have allocations for everything. We have an early stage fund. We have, I think, 800 million allocated for seed. So
dude, that's
all big companies. All big companies are small at some point.
Dude, you're never gonna get any sleep, dude. You're gonna be boiling the ocean.
No, no. I tell you why not, because the bar to get seed game studio funding is, has your founding team, has your game designer, game director or the producer been one of the instrumental figures in creating commercially successful game previously.
Got it.
And the air gets extremely thin. And I don't mean has been involved with, but has been instrumental in, i.e. created the franchise, ran the franchise, has been the leading game designer of a game that previously grows 200 million, 500 million, a billion.
This is one of my big questions, and I've asked guys at Big Craft and Play and all these guys about this, Anton and stuff. And what seems to happen at these VC firms, particularly the bigger ones, is that you create frameworks so that you immediately say no to like 90% of the shit that you see, right? And so
it's way more. It's more like 99.9.
Okay.
Like I get about 10 pitches a day.
And you never even see these pitches, right? You have like your minions like look through it to make sure that.
No. I look at every game studio pitch that comes in.
There's no fucking way, dude. No. That's impossible.
No, it's not.
That's impossible.
No, it's not. You get 10 pitches a day. If they don't attach the deck, you ask for the deck. If they attach the deck, you look at the deck. It literally takes about a minute to look at a deck. So that's 10 minutes of your day. We work 8 a.m. to like 8 p.m. at least. And so that's a fraction actually of the work of the day. It's very easily doable.
Let's actually get to that, because I'm actually really curious about this as well. Like, what do you do on a daily basis? Like, if there's no investing going on right now, right? Or very little, right?
No, that's not true either.
That's not true. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Let me take a step back.
Actually, right now, Q1, there's a lot of so far what I've seen in January and February. I think in terms of supply, it's well in the life. And capital is there, so things will get funded.
No, the capital is definitely there. There's no doubt. Yeah. But everyone's I feel like people are kind of like bracing for impact or worried about stuff. But
honestly, so far into the year, not at all the case. From where I'm sitting.
Yeah. Okay. So as a venture capitalist, you have the biz dev hustle, right? The hustle of it all, right? Dealing with other VCs, dealing with, like boiling the ocean type biz dev work, right? Then you have like strategy, right? Then you have like reporting your work, and then due diligence on these deals. And I'm sure tons of other things that I'm missing. Like, could you actually give me a guesstimate as in a given month, what percentages you're doing in each of these things? Like, I just am curious as to how a VC's day or month is kind of allocated.
Yeah, it's a good question. So people will do this very differently, and I think people also work to very varying degrees. But I work so much that I have to take care of myself to some extent. Like this easily bleeds into like weekends, and I usually start at 6 a.m. and I usually don't switch off my stuff before 9 p.m. That's at least Monday through Thursday. Friday is a little more chill, but like I have sometimes like 10-hour blocks on a Saturday. That's just like everything that's left over from the work. So I think in terms of hours per work, it's probably easily 80 plus. And then oftentimes days are segmented. Like today until now, I've had 30-minute blocks from 7 a.m. till here, and I have 6 more after we're done. And then kind of like 5 p.m., I can actually start any work that requires real thinking, like
Focus.
No diligence would be possible before 5 p.m. on a day like today, for example. And so how does that break down? The thing that's fundamentally different here than what I used to do at Bitcraft, a big chunk at Bitcraft was also raising money into the fund, because companies forget that sometimes too. We fundraise just like startups to those investors, whether that be family offices or high net worth individuals, and then for larger funds, institutional investors, sovereign wealth funds, strategic investors too. Many of the big gaming companies are also investors in funds because they like to use VCs as the eyes and ears of the early stage landscape. So for a lot of funds, that's probably like 20%, 30% of their work is fundraising themselves. Luckily, even though I enjoyed that very much at Bitcraft, that's no longer the case at Lightspeed. They have a very strong integrated fundraising function. So kudos to those guys for just bringing in over $7 billion last year, which will be fine for another year or two. So that's pretty much non-existent for me nowadays, which I'm not sad to lose that part. And so if we have 100% pie, I'd say 30%, 40% is meeting companies, looking at pitch decks, spending time on diligence, asking questions, looking at the answers. And I would include in that also just screening the landscape. Like if you are a VC who invests not just in the seed stage, but also in Series A and Series B, then things don't only come to you. You can also see what else was funded in a seed stage or A stage. And then so you can see if these could be possibly interesting candidates for the next round. So I'd include that all in this 40%.
Like looking at like PitchBook and seeing what deals have been done?
Yeah, not PitchBook. Like funds of our size have a lot of custom analytics tools too. So, at Lightspeed, we have a team that's just focused on building analytical tools for investors to help them with activities like this. So we try and have a bit of a data advantage too as a firm. But yeah, then, a lot of our deal flow is actually the first look at a new venture. So for that, you can't really have an outbound motion. For that, you need to build a brand and a presence. And that is, I think, what you described as networking or biz dev. Like for me at Lightspeed, that's now what is gaming at Lightspeed? What does it mean? Like, how do we present ourselves? What is our unique advantage? And why do founders want to go with us? How does that get articulated? Does there need to be a specific Lightspeed gaming website? What is all the PR that we're doing to tell even people that we're now so focused on gaming? We did that in January and had a nice splash across various outlets. That all takes time too, right? And so events, like on Thursday this week, I rented out Dreamland in Malibu, a location that I love. I wanted to do something a little bit differently than
Malibu? Really?
Yeah.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah. Great location. We have a big concentration in Santa Monica anyway. You have Riot Games here, you have Activision Blizzard here, and so instead of bringing them together for some...
What's the purpose of this meeting in Malibu?
It's bringing 100 gaming founders together. Rented out the place, rented some classic arcade machines, and just having a good time together.
Okay, all right. So this is the part that's really interesting. So you're basically putting these things on in order to attract current and former employees from some of these bigger companies as potential founders, right? Or they're founding.
Many of
currently
these
founding.
many of these are founders. Many of these are portfolio companies. Some of them are actually Bitcraft portfolio companies. To your kind of like earlier point.
And so basically, you're going through your entire Rolodex or getting people to do that, right? And finding the people that you really want to have invited, selected these group, and send them out these invites to come, so that when they decide to fund their next round or they start their new startup, their first call is to Moritz.
That's
at Lightspeed.
That's a mildly cynical but otherwise fair summary.
That's not cynical. That actually wasn't cynical. I got lots of cynical things to say, but that one is just makes sense, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand what it takes in order to build the pipeline of quality that you would need to be successful in this in this world.
Most of the truth is that the deals that come to be ultimately investments are so much more likely to come through something like this versus, a contact form on your website.
Got it. Or
it's just
them
it's
just reaching
true.
out to a myriad of VCs. I got it. Okay. Yes. That makes a lot of sense.
Since we're on the topic of throwing killer events, there's another one that we're labeling Gaming CEO Summit in the frame of GDC, Game Developers Conference in March. And so this one I'm co-hosting with my previous colleagues at Goldman, and in partnership with Microsoft, Sony, and Niantic, we're inviting 200 gaming CEOs, rented out a big place in San Francisco. And this is 100 public and scaled private company CEOs on the one hand, so today's leaders effectively, and then the other 100 are what we think are the 100 most promising startups. CEO event only. Should be good fun too.
That's insane.
That one's epic. And this one we're splitting costs with Goldman, Microsoft, Sony, Niantic, so it's not even that crazy.
I get Microsoft and Goldman. I don't really get why is Niantic involved.
Niantic's the leading company in extended reality gaming. So, I mean, I think we can all agree that is the next platform. The question is just probably on the timing. Mobile AR for now, obviously, in the absence of much anticipated and always delayed AR glasses.
Well, I mean, Niantic, do they really, I mean, they have like location technology, not AR technology, right?
I mean, depends on what you call AR, right? Like people call this mobile AR.
Anyway, that's interesting. So you pay for this out of like some marketing budget at Lightspeed to do these events and grease the wheels of the industry?
It's money well spent.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And of course, my invite got.
It's not even that. Yeah, maybe check the spam folder, Eric. But like, before you get too upset, I'm happy to have you. Obviously.
No, I'm really not that upset. But it sounds like an amazing event. Like, and frankly, I go to these type of events all the time, and it's really fun. And they're all good fun, right? And you meet really interesting people. I mean,
it's also like we're not there to kind of like run down some corporate agenda or pitch or anything. It's really just making sure that who we think are the most interesting and most promising people in the industry at least think of us when their friends ask them who would be a good person to reach out to at least consider. Right. So the goal for all of this is not to weasel our way into some deals, very rarely. It's really first and foremost just to be on the radar and to be a name that comes to mind when someone of that statute asks around, or when some of these companies are thinking about raising their next round.
Got it. Speaking of brand and marketing, I have to admit, I have never seen in my career of 25, 30 years, someone like has marketed themselves as well as you have. Like I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and I am just and all the thing that you're doing, the marathons, all the charity work and stuff like that. I am in awe, and I mean this really. I mean, it is amazing, and so. And I know that's part of like the whole thing of like introducing Lightspeed, introducing yourself to like a broader audience. And I think it's amazing. But I have to ask, like, do you like have a PR agency that does this shit for you? Or are you basically, is this the architect of your own design? Because I need the better PR, I think, because anyway.
Yeah. So
do you do it all yourself?
To be honest, like the push in January, I was almost a little bit scared how good it turned out. Because I think of the outlets we contacted, we actually had 100% coverage. We reached out to like 20 or 25 and they all covered it. And a lot of them with profiles and kind of like custom write-ups and interviews. So yes, I'm very lucky to have an awesome PR team, marketing and PR team at Lightspeed, a team of 3 that has relationships with all these outlets. And so the way I wanted to do this was, obviously we're shooting for some good, like well-established industry outlets, but at the same time, I didn't want us to lose track of where the audience really is, which is a lot of the gaming native sources, like game makers, Navic, InvestGame, and so I want to make sure that we had all those covered too. Even I was reflecting about this a little bit because I think what worked out very well was the marketing team coming in with the initial relationship, and then in some cases we actually didn't immediately get a response, or didn't get the response we wanted. I'm also someone who's just ruthlessly persistent, and for some of these outlets, probably pinged like 10, 15 people before you found someone who actually really likes the topic and really likes the story. And then some of them that we thought were dead, I just didn't want to be dead, so I went the extra mile, and some of them came around with actually some of the favorite articles. The information before they put out this thing was more or less a no/maybe. And then as most things in life, the more you want it, the more likely it actually happens. And then I can tell you what doesn't work. It's just like have some agency or like outsource. It's similar to reaching out to VPs through like bankers, like middlemen of any sorts. Like they're never gonna convey the same magic or conviction as you actually hustling to get in front of someone and then like not letting them rest until you at least have a chance to speak on the phone or speak over Zoom, and then have them fall in love with you just because.
Dude,
I don't know.
You're a fucking hustler, dude. That's what it is. Like you don't give up. I mean, that's impressive, dude. I wish I had more of that skill set. All right, that's really interesting. Well,
but where are we talking about gaming and opportunities, and we can come back to that. Like we still need to run down what's hot and what's not.
Yes, that actually exactly what I was going to do because we got off topic. So. Okay. Yeah, what is hot from your perspective? What are you looking for out there?
What is hot right now? What's not? Those are personal perspectives here. Hot, I think content and IP is always hot because that's the biggest chunk of the industry. That's the hardest stuff to get right. There's a big volatility and like a big, title risk, and so. Most game studios will go to 0. I think it'd be ridiculous to state anything else. And that's historically been the case. It will always be the case. They get to 0 or close to 0. You might get your money back.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. Historically, before the last 3 or 4 years, that's why there wasn't much VC investing in gaming. Was it too hit driven?
But also
versus predictable.
But game studios have also changed. There's a few things that changed. First of all, you can now raise quote unquote only $30 to $50 million and actually produce a AAA game because you can now use tools that help you get there with quote unquote just that amount of money, when like a lot of AAA shops are spending a multiple of that and also have a multiple of the talent, and you can win on fun. It won't look as super polished, but it also doesn't have to be at launch, because the other thing that changed is games become platforms and become games as a service business models where you can launch something that's good enough and fun enough and then build on top of that from there. I mean, just look at, Fortnite's a good example, right? Like the first initial battle royale.
Fortnite's not a good example because it's funded, because Epic has unlimited money. They're just like any other.
Yeah, but like to create this like first version of Fortnite, like you can do that with the right team and 50 million for sure.
Look, Moritz, that's not the way it went down, right? So they spent 6 years building the initial version of that game, and it bombed, right? and then they had a separate team that kind of built this, mode to copy PUBG, right? And you're right, that probably development cost next to nothing relative to
and so you find these people that did that, and then see if they'd be up to fund something new.
Yeah, but it took iteration. It wasn't just like one.
Yeah, but like now, and so that's the other thing. You want your game studios to iterate with the audience from the get-go, right? Like I think Blizzard, for example, has notoriously been a company that's just released games like it's done when it's done, and like we bury ourselves in the hole for 7 years. We build something epic, and then you throw it in the market, and people gobble it up no matter what. That's not a fair representation of how they were interacting with their audience pre-launch, but let's say it was. Riot Games, different philosophy, and a firm that has trained hundreds, thousands of developers in really building games in very close interaction with the audience. And we see a lot of the Riot Games founders literally throw stuff in front of their friends and family like 2 months in, where it's like, oh yeah, all the heroes they don't even have arms and legs, they're just blocks, and like ignore all the UX, just this, and then like, is this more fun, is that more fun, and then you kind of go from there. It's really awesome to see some of these teams. And
but have we seen any successes coming out of Riot, ex-Riot and ex-Diablo people?
We haven't had enough time to actually fund them and have them go to market. Will we see major successes come out of Riot in the next 2 years launching? I'm deeply convinced. If not, I could just pack my stuff and stop what I'm doing here.
People out of Riot, not Riot itself, you're suggesting, right?
Oh yeah. Like people who left Riot, who are building game studios right now.
Like Second
Dinner,
Dinner,
there are a few extremely...
Right.
Theorycraft is one. Raidbase is another interesting one. There are honestly plenty.
Yeah. So,
but same is true. Same is true for Epic Games. Same is true for Blizzard. Same is true for Infinity and Respawn.
Yeah, I mean, my only pushback to that, generally from doing this a long freaking time, is that a lot of the games and things that they do within Riot or Blizzard is based upon established player bases that they can leverage and communicate with, as you suggested. When you go outside of that ecosystem, you don't have that kind of leverage anymore. But in your defense, or your argument, I think would be, is that like something like Second Dinner, they basically brought that audience with them. It's like I mean, Marvel was a great IP, but they also have tons of people that love what they do, and I think that kind of helped them as well. So yeah, I guess you're right. We'll see how many of them can scale and build successful businesses. The other point that I would make is like, things like Valheim, which was an amazing experience, by the way, great game coming out, lasted for what, 2 weeks, right? Because they didn't have the resources to support it.
Yeah.
So that's the other concern I have with these type of, software as a service startups, right? Do they have the resources to maintain?
I mean, the best teams that get funding check the boxes in terms of having previously built and led games as a services before. They also from the get-go think about what the content cadence is and the maintenance is, and like what the live ops will look like, and also what distribution and marketing will look like. Taking VC funding also means you're no longer taking publisher funding unless they come in a later round, and so that has implications for how you even want to think about marketing and distribution. Some of the biggest game studios, VC funded studios, are even building publishing functions in-house. But that you can only do once you really reach a certain scale.
Right. All right.
Anyway, so PC, I want to come back to the original question, so we at least give that to the audience, right? I think PC, console, cross-platform, AAA, gaming, content, and IP, hot, my perspective.
I'm with you on that.
Mobile, I mean, if there's only hot or not, then I would have to choose not. Right now, I think it's really hard to make a case for tight coupling between talent and future success on the mobile side. It seems it's a lot wilder west than is PC console, and then layer on top of that ATT and distribution issues. Right now, it's tough. Not so hot also Web3, not so hot, also XR. You mentioned those two. I think on Web3, what we've seen in the last 2 years, was a bit of a, and everyone, it's easy to just say like, oh, the valuations were crazy, and many funds, including Bitcraft, were very active on the Web3 front. There were also a lot of very good bets that were made in Web3, and they're not all bad. But I think the two things that were wrong or tough, or at least we need to get right on Web3 gaming before it can really take off, are twofold. One, the business models were, I don't think a lot of these business models were like predatory to begin with. I think some were obviously rug pulls and never well intended, but a lot of them also just didn't get it right, because it's really hard to get right. But you will also know that like the last business model we made to free to play, that also just didn't happen overnight. And like for the industry to figure out that pay to win is a big no-go, but pay to have a funny hat that looks cool in front of your friends, and you'll ask your mom to also get some money to buy that same cool party hat, like that's apparently the way to go for microtransactions and the free-to-play business model.
Hold on a minute. Whoa.
Yeah.
That's 95% of the revenue generated from the store is pay to win, right? Pay to progress. Like I think
on the mobile side, yeah, but you're on the mobile side always.
Right.
Yeah, I think everything I say, I'm always a little bit more biased.
But even on the console
PC
side, like all the FIFA, Madden, all the NBA 2K, it's all pay to win, right? Pay to progress. I think the overwhelming microtransaction revenue on the PC console side is not pay to win, but it's cosmetics. But maybe it should be. Maybe that's
like these are things like no one thought. I mean, I don't know at the time. I doubt that many people thought that cosmetics would be such a treasure trove, right? And so
100%.
Same on the Web3 side. You can't get this right in the first year. So I think some of this needs more time. I think there's a chance to build sustainable, viable economic business models. And so that's one thing that people need to get right. Is there any hard roadblock to get there? I don't see why that would be the case. The other, no, I'm going to continue now. So we make some ground on this question. The other thing is, people were just fine with folks building video games that didn't know a thing about building video games. And I think that is the biggest mistake that was made. I look at a Web3 game studio, and fine that you want to use Web3, but you're still a game studio. So let's come back to the basics. So what is your design director? Who's responsible for production? What have they built previously? Building games is super fucking hard. And honestly, the Web3 rails are not easy, but also not super fucking hard. So the big challenge here is still building a great game that will attract eyeballs for a long time, 10 years plus, because it's a media format. And so the value comes from the sustainable attraction it creates. Like, Web3, from my perspective, is more a value distribution topic than a value creation topic. The value creation comes from building something that is fun in a long-lasting way. So fine if you want to be a Web3 game studio. I will basically look at you as if you were a game studio. We can talk about the quality of your game design chops and what you've done previously. And then we can also talk about your backend and other topics. And then after all of that, we can talk about whether you want to use Web3 or not. Like, honestly, if you're building something AAA, there's like a 1.5 years so of pre-production, and then you go into production. There's enough time to build in Web3 if you down the road decide that is something you want to do. But what you won't get around, what you can't shortcut, is building an outstanding, fun video game. And so that's the biggest, I think that's the bigger mistake, even bigger than the business models that was made. Is that also something that is unsurmountable? No. If the right people go after the Web3 opportunity, there's no reason why this would be a hard block for future success in Web3 gaming.
All right. So console, PC, software as a service, is a positive. Mobile is out for now, or like kind of, nascent, figure that stuff out. Web3 seems like a no if I were to read between the lines, but possible going forward if you get the right team in front of you that has a good idea, has a good game. It's just basically Web3 becomes an enabling technology to some degree to do what they want to do type thing.
Yeah. So what is interesting in the meantime, of course, are infrastructure plays in Web3.
Right.
Same with XR. Like you mentioned XR, XR always feels like it's 5 years away from mainstream for like 10 years now. And yeah, I think this last half year was a little bit sobering again, if anything, on that front. And so, as a VC funding a VR game studio, you're basically funding a game that at least today is serving an audience of an active install base of, I don't know, something like 30 million devices or in that range.
I wouldn't define that as active, but maybe 30 million have been sold. Maybe like 5 million are active. So, but yes, yeah. I think we're on the same page.
So it's tough to see a venture return case there. Yeah, right. And then so it all becomes about what's your personal conviction about the development of this install base. And that's where I think, even with generous assumptions, we're all excited about XR. Like, I think there's no doubt that the next platform is, I'm excited about an AR future. I think there'll be a time where we make fun of screens. I hope so. I'd be surprised if not. I think that's more likely to happen than not to happen. But the tricky thing to get right as a VC is always timing. These are 10-year funds. And so, so if the mainstream moment is not in the next 3 to 4 years, then it's too early for this fund. And I think, unfortunately, on XR, that's probably still the case. Now, we are making AR and VR investments. Again, it's a bit more on the platform and enabling infrastructure side. So
that makes sense.
Another enabling infrastructure innovation we haven't talked about is AI and all the stuff that's happening on the procedural generation front. I mean, there's enough buzz about it. I just want to, for the record, that's a hot. But also for the record, I think it's very hard to pick winners that are sufficiently differentiated and not just building on top of existing, mid-journey, stable diffusion. Stability AI is a great Lightspeed investment, by the way, from the enterprise team. And so it's the cool thing about Lightspeed also is that I have these groups, enterprise, consumer, healthcare, healthcare less relevant for gaming maybe, but fintech, when we're looking at payment solutions, with experts who have been investing in AI, computer vision, consumer marketplaces, social networks for 10 years, and can be drawn into cases where it's not a bread and butter game studio, which I'm comfortable looking at myself, but is more a gaming platform or gaming technology that intersects with other consumer or enterprise domains.
How about Edtech? Are you looking, or do you have teams looking at Edtech at all? I mean, that's a tough,
we don't have.
Tough space.
Yeah, it's also a space where there haven't been a whole lot of breakouts, I think.
Like Duolingo, and what are the ones?
Yeah, I mean, Duolingo is a great one. I think that's venture funded, right? I'm actually not 100% sure.
I'm not sure either, to be honest.
Yeah, it's not a sector I'm very experienced in. Yeah. No, this like green owl is haunting me on my language lessons.
Exactly. All right. Any other like areas of interest for you? So you're basically enabling technologies, AAA console.
Yeah.
The
way I look at it is game studios. I think that one we've discussed. Gaming platforms that basically look like consumer platforms, marketplaces, social networks that have a gaming component. I mean, the scaled examples are Discord, Twitch, that kind of stuff. Yeah. So this is something that we're looking closely at together with.
What bugs me about
experts.
those is like the business model has not emerged for any of those. Like, they don't make money. I think Twitch to this day is still losing hundreds of millions of dollars every year. It's like, I don't know. What is the business model for social? I mean, besides advertising, which Twitch I don't think likes to do, and Discord's certainly not going to do.
I mean, Discord's Nitro seemed to be working pretty well, and continues to scale nicely too.
But they're still super unprofitable. Well, maybe you can't comment, but like
I don't know about super.
Well, I will say that they're super unprofitable, and I will I'm happy to hear anybody else that says differently. But I know Twitch is still unprofitable. I mean, no matter what they do. So anyway, all right. Yeah, I mean that makes sense. That all makes sense.
And then so that's studios, platforms, and then on the tech side, we've discussed some of the tech stuff. But tech extends into UGC technology, anything on the content creation front. Like I'm also looking at novel forms of 3D creation, including volumetric photogrammetry, NERF. So there's an intersection between 3D vision and AI that I think, if you think about how we create 3D experiences, it's so different and so much harder than creating all kind of other media. And I think there's a natural evolution that enables laymen to create stuff. And historically that's been text, then images, then video. And I think going forward, 3D is going to be the next thing. That's just very easy to create for everyone in quality.
Yeah, that's a whole other subject. But I'm totally with you, dude. Like there's been really the pain and agony it is to create a 3D world for a game is just too much. There should be something to alleviate the bottleneck of creating new worlds, and that is a huge opportunity. But
there's a lot of innovation happening also on that front, and I think,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
That would be really cool to look at, frankly. All right, but we got to go because we are running out of time, and I'm sure you're a busy man. Clearly, you're a busy man because you're going to be working till 8:00 tonight. Or
ideally,
9:00, right? You clearly have no family, right? Or
oh no, I have a loving wife who is an entrepreneur herself and understands the grind. So we got it covered from both sides.
The children, no children yet.
Children are. Well, if we do another recording next year at this time, the answer might already be different for that.
Oh, wow!
And then we have a lovely little kava who keeps us entertained until then.
Okay, all right. So last question. What are you excited about as a gamer, right? Because you are a gamer and probably, are a much better gamer than I am, I'm sure. But like, what are you excited over the next few years from a game perspective?
Well, I hope that this Rocket League port to Unreal Engine 5 is happening soon. There will be a major event in my life. That's the only game that I play right now is Rocket League.
Oh, get out.
Diablo 4 is coming out, so probably have to take a look at that.
You think? That the 5 years of your life and sacrificing your education and embarrassing your family, you gotta play Diablo 4.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'll continue to embarrass my family, so that
I know
probably not going to help with that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, it's been really good to get to know you and get to know what you guys do. I'm excited to see what Lightspeed ends up investing in. I mean, it'll be a real indication of where your mettle is to see what you guys invest in the next 6 months to a year.
Yeah, we already have one exciting first investment that we will be announcing over the course of the next 3 weeks or so. All right. Well, make sure you send me the article and I will mention it on the podcast when it happens and see how well it does. And I'll give you my 2 cents if it's for what that's worth. Awesome. Anyway, good luck at Lightspeed and good chatting. Thank you, Eric.